Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. Phil Giraldi joins us now. Phil, always a pleasure. My dear friend, thank you for joining us. I have been asking a lot of our regular guests, many of whom are friends of yours and mine, if Victoria Nuland, the neocon thug who just left the State Department after a career there, was pushed or jumped. But you have done a substantial amount of research and what I would call a think piece on this, in which you postulated and explained the various theories about whether she was pushed or jumped. What is the mystery of Victoria Nuland?
Well, I think the central mystery is to what extent this move will allow her to retain her ambition. Now, that's kind of the key to her. She's 62 years old, so she's relatively young, and she has many options that are opening up in front of her. She can go to one of the think tanks. She can go to one of the foundations. She could go to a university. She has all those doors opening up, which will allow her to continue to have a voice. And this is kind of the interesting door that is opening. And we're kind of watching and trying to figure which way she's going to go. She obviously has some very strong feelings about Russia and very strong feelings about America's role in the world. And I can't see this going away. The pushed or jumped theory, it can't be both. She could have decided in terms of her own self-interest, with the possibility of a hostile Donald Trump coming into the presidency, that it might be a good time for her to maneuver. And also, the Biden administration might feel that she's kind of too strong on certain issues, and that it might be good for them in for electoral reasons to push her overboard.
So, so this is how absurd these elites are in the State Department. This is nothing new to you. It might be new to some of our viewers. When she left, I mean, this is a bull in a china shop, if ever there was one. But when she left, the Secretary of State lauded her personal diplomacy, and her commitment to diplomacy is so great it will be studied for years. I mean, her commitment, I don't want to take words out of your mouth, is to killing. It's not to diplomacy.
No, it never was diplomacy. It's not diplomacy to what she did by directly intervening in elections and government formation in Ukraine. I mean, that was not diplomacy. And she also, of course, was heavily involved, as far as we can tell, with some other instances of non-diplomacy. And I would cite, for example, Libya, and I would cite Syria, and I would cite, I mean, the fact that here we've had the Russians basically in the post-communist mode, seeking to establish a good working relationship with the United States and with the Europeans. And it was basically people like Victoria Nuland in the US State Department and in the media who essentially have made that fail. And that's the big one. The big one is we could have had the no threat of nuclear war, which is hanging over us right now and is largely a gift of Nuland and her neocon friends and people who think like her in both parties and in the government.
It's interesting you say both parties. I mean, she testified against Donald Trump at his first impeachment, the imbroglio over the phone call to Vladimir Zelensky. But yet, she and of course she worked for Joe Biden and Tony Blinken. But I'm pretty sure she started out under Dick Cheney. I mean, the mentality, the neocon warrior mentality is the same. she just is able to have her feet in both parties.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the neocon trick. They're on both sides. And she did indeed start out with Dick Cheney. She was his international security advisor. So she played a role in terms of how the Bush administration, the George W. Bush administration, confronted the world. And the way it confronted the world was, the new sheriff has arrived in town, and we're going to tell all you guys what to do and how to do it.
Was she largely responsible for concocting or at least supporting, promoting, and maybe even funding the coup that threw out President Poroshenko, the popularly elected president of Ukraine in 2014?
Well, she certainly was the leadership of it, the most prominent figure in it, together, of course, with Senator John McCain, who popped into Ukraine a number of times and joined her. But
Let me just stop you. If he was there, then we know that Lindsey Graham was with him to carry his bag.
Yeah, that's right. Lindsey Graham would have been there too. So basically, there was a group of people who were doing this kind of thing. It has been revealed, and in fact, I even confirmed by her, I believe, that $5 billion were spent by the United States government in various capacities to bring about that regime change. And it was people like her, but also let's not forget the National Endowment for Democracy and other groups within the government that are quasi-governmental or private sector. They were all in on this too.
Wow. $5 billion spent by the United States government to overthrow the popularly elected president of Ukraine in 2014. Did any of this pay the snipers that were shooting people in Maidan Square?
Well, one might assume that that is exactly where some of it went. This wasn't done in a passive mode. It's quite incredible. And the other thing the people listening have to remember is that at the time all this was going on, Ukraine was not hostile to the United States, and it was not an enemy. And yet somehow some people who claim to know better thought it was a good idea to overthrow their government and get a government that was essentially hostile to Russia.
Wow. She was involved in the overthrow of Gaddafi along with her buddy Hillary Clinton in the Obama years.
Yeah, absolutely. That was another team. Again, uh, by many standards, Libya was one of the most stable countries in Africa. It had the highest standard of living of all the countries in Africa, and it basically had a stable government. But we decided that was not good enough, and we basically got involved with some dissidents in Benghazi, and we sort of made it look like this was a revolution for freedom. And then, of course, the Europeans got into it too. And the next thing we know, Gaddafi was dead by a horrific act. And the government has been unstable and feeding arms to dissident movements in Africa and elsewhere ever since.
Mrs. Nuland, I don't know if she goes by Mrs. Nuland or Mrs. Kagan, but I don't want to mock her name. Her husband's name is Kagan. Her name is Nuland. She is now a professor over Jeff Sachs's opposition and Hillary Clinton's welcome mat. Nuland is now a professor at Columbia University. I don't know if she's a contract or if she's a tenured professor, but she's there. She was running the State Department one day. The next day, she landed on her feet at a very cushy, high-paying job at Columbia, thanks to her friend Mrs. Clinton. Before we take a break and then go on to another topic, did she have a reputation? I know this sounds ridiculous, but I've seen this in print a couple of times for using very unladylike language.
Yeah.
Okay.
famously, when she was overthrowing the Ukrainian government, and someone said, "Oh, shouldn't we talk to the Europeans about that?" She used the F word to describe what she thought about the Europeans, and it was recorded. She was on a phone when she was doing it, and it was recorded by the Russians, who then released the recording.
I think that recording was used to cross-examine her to impeach her credibility at Trump's impeachment trial, if I remember correctly. All right, we're going to take a break just to run a commercial message. When we come back, Phil and I will be discussing, I think you know the answer, if the Israeli government is a criminal gang. But first, this. How do you really feel about your financial future right now, today? Stable or uncertain? Despite all the happy talk that the Fed and the banks want you to buy into, I believe that 2024 is going to be a very unstable year, politically and financially. That's one of the reasons I decided to buy physical gold and silver, and I suggest you should do the same and do it now. Why? Because throughout times of economic uncertainty, gold and silver have rightly earned a reputation for stability. Owning precious metals has made me feel more stable, and it can do the same for you. Reach out to my friends at Lear Capital and get their free wealth protection guides. You can reach them at 800-511-4620. Lear has earned an excellent reputation by helping thousands of customers just like you move portions of their retirement savings into Lear gold and silver IRAs. It's easy to do, and it's tax and penalty free. Don't be caught off guard. Experts predict the markets may tank again. You'll be happy if you have protection in place. So call Lear at 800-511-4620. 800-511-4620, or go to LearJudgeNap.com and tell them your friend the judge sent you. Our friend and colleague, Professor Jeff Sachs, has referred to the Israeli government. He means the government of Prime Minister Netanyahu and the IDF as a criminal gang. Is there enough evidence to support that conclusion?
Well, I would say that it depends how one defines one's criminality. I think the fact that the Israeli government deliberately is acting contrary to international law in many areas, particularly in terms of Genocide Act, in terms of anti-humanitarian actions taking place both inside Israel, what Israel considers its own territory, and in Gaza. Yeah, sure, they are a criminal conspiracy. I don't know if you saw it, but a couple hours ago it came over the news that Benjamin Netanyahu had approached the U.S. Senate and wanted to address them to circumvent what the White House, what the president, who is in charge of foreign policy, is doing. And Schumer, fortunately, turned him down on behalf of the Democrats. But as far as I can tell, it looks like quite possible that the Republicans will invite him to address them. And of course, this is a trick that Netanyahu has pulled a couple times, most notably under Obama, where the Republicans invited Netanyahu to visit the United States and address the Congress. And this was all over the attempt to create a non-proliferation agreement with Iran, which was very strongly in America's own interest and very strongly opposed by Netanyahu, who has his own nuclear arsenal.
I did not know this, Phil. Maybe this would never happen, but maybe the State Department will deny him a visa. But that's not going to happen for domestic political reasons. I mean, Chuck Schumer, I give him credit for saying no. It's the first time he's done anything since his speech. The speech had nice words in it, but that speech is meaningless unless he's going somehow to stop the constant, nearly daily delivery of military equipment, supplies of weapons of death, and ammunition that comes from the United States and goes to Israel. It's amazing to me. I must have missed this. I didn't see any votes in the Congress for all this aid to Israel. We just had a young fellow on right before you, Connor Freeman from libertarian.org and antiwar.com, and he claimed that there is some threshold, some numerical threshold for the passage of military equipment from the United States to another country, that if the amount doesn't exceed that threshold, the government doesn't have to run to Congress. Do you know about this? Is this similar to when Tony Blinken committed perjury by signing a statement under oath swearing that the United States had an emergency and the United States national security interest required $100 million in equipment go to Israel immediately and there wasn't time to go to the Congress? We talking about the same thing here?
In a manner of speaking, I think what he's referring to is the fact that it's not exactly a threshold. It's just kind of an understanding that if the amount of equipment is basically considered to be minimal, and it's going to what is considered to be an ally, there's considerable discretion in the process to do this. But of course, they're going way beyond that, as you noted. The shipments are taking place almost every day. They're in secret. And then the bigger shipments, of course, were done on the back of a lie, of several lies, that there was an emergency and Israel, to defend itself, needed these emergency munitions, which, of course, is a bigger lie.
Well, Israel is not an ally of the United States. Correct me, Phil. We have no treaty of alliance with Israel. Am I right?
You're absolutely correct.
I mean, Israel isn't even a democracy. Could Phil Giraldi or Andrew Napolitano or anybody watching us now who's not Jewish buy land in Jerusalem?
Well, I tell you what, I couldn't even step foot in Jerusalem without being detained, arrested, with no charges filed, and held for as long as they want. If you call that a democracy, I guess that's different strokes, as they say. But Israel is not an ally, has never been an ally. An ally requires a document, basically, which demonstrates what the reciprocity is between the two partners or the multiple partners in the case of a place like NATO. And that's what it's all about, reciprocity. And it also has like tripwires to make sure that nobody is starting a war without good reason, if that's what it involves. So there are a whole lot of things that Israel is not: an ally, friend. I keep seeing the thing this weekend. There were a couple of articles about Israel. The argument used to be Israel was America's flat top, basically its landing strip in the Middle East. But Israel has never shown any reciprocity for U.S. interests in the Middle East at all.
What do you think will happen in Rafa? The population of Rafa 6 months ago was about 225 to 250,000. There's now 1,000,003. 1,000,003, 5 times that 250, jammed in there. Nearly all of them above the original 250, forced down from northern Gaza by the IDF. And now, of course, the IDF is threatening to invade Rafah. Could any other country in the world get away with this? They've denied them food. They've denied them water. They won't let medicine come in. They've cut off the electricity. They've destroyed the schools. They've destroyed the mosques. They've destroyed the hospitals. This former student of mine who texted me during the show the other day, his a cousin was a 35-year-old head of pediatrics, MD, head of pediatrics at the Gaza City Hospital, slaughtered by a machine gun while tending to 2 babies, not tending to Hamas killers, but tending to 2 babies. I mean, how much longer could this go on before Joe Biden will never say enough is enough, but would anybody say enough is enough? Any state actor who commands troops that could stop this?
The problem is it gets crazier than that. I don't know if you saw the recent, I think yesterday, the day before, statement by Jared Kushner.
Oh gosh, I saw it. I
Yeah,
saw it. Chris played it for me. It's enough to make you vomit. I would run it, but it's too long. We're going to cut it down. But
yeah.
go
Well,
ahead. I'll let you
let
describe.
me just summarize it. He
Sure.
basically says that all these Gazans, we could just move them to the Negev desert. Now that's a kind of tricky, as Israel doesn't have any surplus of water, so these people, I suppose, would have to eat sand. And once you get rid of them, he said that there's a lot of nice real estate there along the Mediterranean coast, which will become available, and there's a lot of opportunity for making really good money there. So that's the solution from one uh, educated, informed American who has profound contacts with the Israeli government. I mean, come on, where are we at with this? This is sadism beyond anything that we have seen since whatever went on in the Second World War.
There is a brouhaha going on here in northern New Jersey. It's not in my neighborhood. It's about 40 or 50 miles from here.
Yep.
A synagogue invited, I don't know if you know about this, real estate agents from Israel to come and make presentations. And they made presentations of land in Israel and land in Gaza. And the brouhaha is that none of this can be purchased by Americans who are not Jewish, and that's a violation of New Jersey law. And liberal Jewish groups in northern New Jersey are demanding that the Attorney General prosecute these people for their efforts to do that which is in this state, for better or for worse, unlawful. You can't sell real estate with a racial or religious restriction on it. As far as I know, you can't do that in any state in the union. So I don't know where any of this is going to go. I don't know that any other country could get away with this. I don't know how much slaughter there would have to be before somebody used force to put a stop to it.
Yeah, these real estate guys apparently went to Canada too. They were in Toronto, only to Jewish communities and at synagogues and Jewish family centers. And they had 3 places marked out in New Jersey. They went to 2 of them, and the other one they were afraid of a major demonstration, and so I think they canceled it. But the fact is, the land they're giving away is land that was stolen from the Palestinians. When they're talking about this stuff in Israel, Israel has expanded dramatically, and it includes land and houses that were stolen from Palestinians and now are being offered for sale to American and Canadian Jews. I love it.
I guess it's domestic politics. And as Professor Mearsheimer would say, the influence of the donor groups, the donor class, he calls it, which keeps the American government from saying enough is enough. I mean, I haven't heard anybody in the Congress say enough is enough. Has anybody in the Congress called this genocide and asked Joe Biden to stop it? Or does AIPAC have an iron grip over everybody, progressives and libertarians, as well as mainstream party of war members of Congress?
Yeah, Bernie Sanders is the only one I've heard say anything, except for some of the progressives in the Democratic Party that have said they're careful about what they say, but they're terrified of being targeted by AIPAC and by the Israel lobby.
Phil, it seems to get worse every time we talk about this, but I thank you for your intellect, your patience, and your cheerfulness, my dear friend. And the cat and the dog going back and forth behind you are absolutely adorable and not without notice. One of our writers named Sandra Jones calls your cat Super Cat.
Well, thank you for that.
All right, Phil. We'll see you again soon. Thank you for your time, my friend.
Okay, take care.
All the best. He's terrific. Coming up at 4:00, another terrific young man, Aaron Matei. And at 8:00 tomorrow morning Eastern, you got to get up for this because he's in fighting form. Scott Ritter, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.